Hey guys, this is Simon from Team Lord Chasers, and I'm coming at you guys with my deck profile of branded Despia, which I used to play in our Rarity Collection tournament a while back. So before I decided to edit the deck, I wanted to bring y'all the deck profile so that y'all could kind of like see what I played and probably explain some of my deck choices. So we're just gonna jump right on in here. So of course we're gonna start out with the 3 Aluber because he's like a key piece of your deck to get started on some of your plays. He searches your branded fusion. If you didn't open it, he gets you branded walls or any of your other branded cards if you just so happen to need them, like branded in high spirits. Say you tried to bait out Ash with branded fusion and you got Ash anyways, you go get branded in high spirits and you try to play from there. Next we have the 3 Albaz because every fusion needs him. Branded fusion needs him. He needs to be almost like Dark Magician. He needs to be everywhere and also nowhere. He can be in your hand, on the field, in the graveyard, in the deck, probably banished. He's pretty much what you need. Then 3 Cartesias because if push come to shove, you can use her to dodge imperms on your Alubers. She's your backup in case you get hit with Ash because we know Brandon hates Ash. I'm only on 1 Quim because that's the only one that I have. You're technically supposed to run 2, but 1 can get you there if you can't afford it. She also is a pretty good piece at times. She's a nice inboard piece for follow-up plays. She's also sometimes a pretty generic starter for your combos if you didn't open well. Then we have, of course, we got Despia Tragedy. That's who goes and searches you. Depending on what your hand looks like, normally goes and gets you a Luber, or he gets you your Quim, help you out with your plays. I'm on 1 Spriggan's kit. Recycling some of your banished spells is very beneficial at times, especially Retribution, even though Retribution, if you open it, is a brick, but her going to get it back, or in the off chance that your hand was pretty bad, she can also go get you a branded fusion. Unfortunately, she's not a even exchange. She's a -1 because you end up having to put a card back after you use her effect. So she's not that great, but in a pinch she comes in handy. 2 Mercurier, also he can be a play starter. He's also our only hand trap, so he's an in-archetypal hand trap. Keeps things like Nibiru from wiping your board in the case that you have to shotgun it to protect your board against Nibiru. Outside of that, using him is very important. You have to have a lot of discipline, probably know what your deck matchup is, because using him can normally end turns and help you in the long game. I'm also running 1 Albaz the Ashen, more names for Albaz, and in most cases he's also a pretty good follow-up in case one of your key fusion monsters get hit. He can come out from the graveyard and he can provide protection for your board so that they can't target the rest of your board. He's like a baby brigand, the glory dragon. I'm also on 1 Albion the Shrouded Dragon. He fixes your hand, he sets your graveyard up. Him plus Granganol can get you into branded fusion if need be. We have 1 Ad Libitum. He's the card that you use when you want to sort of kind of loop your Mirror Jade off of a Cartesia fusion into a Draco's Stapelia or another Granguinol, and you use this to kind of like supplement that so that you can go back and you can grab either a Despia monster or one of your fusions and put it back on the board. Of course, we're running the Gimmick Puppet because for some odd reason, Konami decided that we can just keep doing this. So free wins are sometimes a good thing, especially if you're up against a deck that you know you really can't compete with without a struggle, aka Snake Eyes. Really doesn't do anything to Flaunderies. Flaunderies looks at you and just be like, okay, so I'm gonna play anyways. Then we're on a small bestial package. We got Lubellion, we got Sarnier, and we got Magnemite. Kind of self-explanatory. He's part of our inboard. He sets up our branded loss for us. Beast, Retribution, not Retribution, but Regained, so we can have a little bit of draw power and recycling. 2 Fenrirs, because Fenrir just gives us a body, additional disruption, and a free discard fodder for our combo. That's it for the monster lineup. Next, we're going to move on to the spells here. So, up first, we, of course, the main playmaker of the deck. We got the three branded fusions. This is pretty much our bread and butter. Everyone wants it banned because it says it gives out too much advantage. I'm not sure if I agree with the whole it gives out too much advantage, because most of the time if you shotgunning this, you're not getting a whole lot of value out of it because you don't really have all of that much setup. So essentially you end up only, I guess, putting in the graveyard like 1 card, and then that 1 card stays in the graveyard because Albaz ends up getting banished, and then he gets bounced back to the deck. And then the only thing that went to the graveyard was essentially the 1 card that you sent. Then we have Branded Opening, also a really good play starter. It allows you not to use your normal summon, and it gets you into your Alubers so that you can search whatever you need, or it gets your Quim on board so that your Quim can set up your graveyard a little bit and give you some additional help on later turns. Then we have the Branded in High Spirits. I'm iffy on this card. Like, the card is good only because it can bounce itself back to your hand if you discarded it and you manage to get a fusion. So it kind of like gives you free discard fodder for later on. It sort of kind of helps set up the graveyard. It also can trigger Quim in a pinch. So it's, for me, it's a really situational card. Other people claim that it's one of the best cards that we have. For me personally, it just feels lackluster, but it's probably because I'm not using it right. Next, of course, we have the Branded Loss. We have to have that. Gives us ability to make sure our opponent can't mess up our plays while we're doing our fusions. Word of note, as always, make sure that the very last thing that resolves off the chain is that you are performing a fusion summon. That way, on the next part of once that chain resolves, this can protect your plays. Next we have, of course, my 2 backup cards for in case Branded Fusion fizzles. It depends on what my hand and my graveyard looks like. We have Branded in Red, which you normally set off of Albion, and then we have Branded in White, which allows you to use a Albaz that's engraved. If you started out with Quim, you can go ahead and use that, or if you started with an Albaz in hand, which most of the time I don't like having Albaz in hand, but if we have him in hand, we can try to make our plays from there. The 1 Branded Regain to give us a little bit of recursion in case we need to start recycling things as they get banished, because most of the time we're going to be banishing things. Also works really good if you can set this up and your opponent decides they want to put SP Little Knight out there. You can just shuffle a SP Little Knight back into their extra deck. They're just going to have to make it again. Most of the time I don't like doing that because they will make it again, but probably not during that same turn, but they will make it again, and you're just letting them constantly get advantage over you by doing that. But it does kind of help out because during the end phase, they won't be able to, they won't bring it back, and you'll just get your monster back and you can keep playing. So let's move on to our traps here. We got the one branded beast, which since we don't really have a lot of in archetypal spell and trap removal, this functions effectively as that, considering that we can constantly loop Lubellion, and if we just so happen to get the branded regain set up with some bestials engraved, this will always be live. So you can stop problematic cards like Divine Temple, you can pop the Fire King Island, any of the prime planets from any of the Visas decks. Next we have our one copy of Retribution, which is essentially let me try branded fusion again, and hopefully you don't have Ash. Let me get back any of my other branded cards. Also functions well as a special summon negate, and that's pretty much what I normally try to use it for. Now we're going to get to the Nun engine. This might as well have been a branded card, but fusion deployment. This is how we technically break boards, get Cartesian on field, sometimes try to bait the Ash. Most people, once you play this, they know, oh, it's this is branded, so most of the time they don't Ash this. Then we have Super Poly, great for going first or second, and if you have a really bad hand, you can just set your Albaz and then set a Super Poly and hope that they play something that you can use and get away with it. Free Mirror Jades. Then we have our sort of kind of semi starters. We have Gold Sarcophagus and Foolish Burial. This one is basically just for Mercurier. This one is for Tragedy, but Tragedy can also be used with Gold Sark if you want. And then of course the obligatory Called by the Grave, because we hate Ash. Fusion Duplication, we're running that because you know, if we open this and if I had thrust, we could thrust into this and set this, and then we can just attempt to do branded fusion on my opponent's turn since they didn't let me do it on mine. One Harpies, back row hate. Then we also are running the one Triple Texas Talent inside the main deck because typically this is a hand trap format, so basically anytime someone plays a hand trap, I'm either drawn to or let me see that hand. That's normally the case. Or in later turns, let me take the monster so I can go ahead and finish this game because I need to get out of here. And then the last card that I want to show you is New Frontier. It should have been something branded New Frontier of the branded, something with branded in it so we could search it, because this card, when it works, it's amazing. When it don't, it doesn't do anything. But the fact that you can activate both of these effects, because this card allows you to get into your Mercuriers, it allows you to get to your Cartesias, it allows you to get to anybody that just so happens to mention Fallen of Albaz, along with Fallen of Albaz himself, as long as they summon any of these monsters. I think, yeah, it includes the ritual monsters, which unfortunately Mirror J cannot be made off of ritual monsters, but if they do any of those types of summons, you get to go and search for Fallen of Albaz, a Cartesia, any of the other cards, Mercurier, Albion, the Shrouded Dragon. You can go get all of those. And then if they summon again of those types of monsters, then you get to special summon one of them out your hand. So it sort of kind of is a pseudo, let me build my board as you play so that I can try to counteract you. Sucks that it doesn't have branded in its name, so it's not searchable. I run it at 1, and if I go second, sometimes depending on the deck that you're up against, you can technically get this to fire off a lot. So that's pretty much the main deck. I do believe that is about 45 or 46 cards. I forgot to count before I did this, so it's in there. It's pretty thick. Next we're gonna move on to my extra deck. So I'm only on one Mirror Jade because I made some concessions. So I really have to be careful with Mirror Jade, because if Mirror Jade goes, sometimes the battles get a little bit harder. Sometimes I can recycle him and get him back into the extra deck and I can bring him back. If he's in the graveyard, he's pretty much fine because I can just bring him back with Quim. But outside of that, he's at one currently in this iteration of my deck, because we the extra deck space is very tight. We're going to be on 2 Albions because 1 Albion is pretty decent. 2 just gives us a little bit more consistency later on in the grind game. We're on 2 Granguinals because with her, you want to be able to send multiple times, and sometimes you're going to have to go into her again, and also having a second one allows your fusion duplications later on in the grind game to be a little bit more impactful, because you'll be able to get to your Cartesias again. 1 Lubellion, because he's just Lubellion. He knows what he does. He comes out, makes the fusion. Normally he's going into Mirror Jade, but in a pinch, he can give you access to almost your entire extra deck just by him just getting on the board and activating his effect. 1 Titaniclad. This is a combo piece, and sometimes he's out to towers like monsters, since he's the only one who can gain attack. And if you're lucky enough to have because this is basically how you do it using Lubellion, if you can have any of your big monsters in the graveyard along with Shrouded Dragon, you can technically make a large 42, I think 47 attack, 4700 attack power Titaniclad, and he can pretty much solo anybody by himself. Then we have the Albion the Sanctifier Dragon. He's busted. I don't want him to be banned. I would prefer that he receives a errata that says he has to choose monsters that have Albaz in their name. Well, not in their name, but mention Fallen of Albaz or a Fallen of Albaz. Then he would probably be fine. But as he is right now, yeah, he is busted and he is ban worthy. I understand, because gimmick puppet locking it's degenerate, toxic, and it does breed a very bad format with him being in it. Then we have our 1 Renbrum. Good interruption. Can bounce a monster. Makes it so that you can use Mirror Jade on your turn. Negate it with her. Get your start and follow up for the end phase, and then you can still have your Mirror Jade available for the next turn. Quartus and Masquerade. Quartus is normally who you summon off of Cartesia, just not Cartesia, but Granguinal, in the off chance that you just need to try to survive for a turn. This is starting to not be a very good person to go into, to be honest, because most people are starting to understand that they can say proceed to battle and you can activate this effect, and then it'll be like remain in main and then combo, and so your Quartus has effectively used his effect and not done anything to help you out. Masquerade is basically a time card, unless you're going first and you know that the person you're playing against has to play a lot of cards in order to get their combo off, so you put Masquerade out there to kind of like burn them to make it a little bit easier on your turn 3. But he's not, if you're putting him out there and hoping that that's going to be it, you're probably going to be in a pretty bad spot. Next we have Lulu. This is normally who we either send off of Granguinal or who we summon off of Granguinal using her effect, so that we can kind of like have a extra deck negate monster. So it's essentially works like a Dramaturge, who I'm thinking about putting in here because that's probably going to be a better option over the Abliptum. Of course, the one obligatory Guardian Chimera and the Draco Stapelia. I hardly ever go into him, but every time I take him out, the situation where I need him always rises. So at this point, he's just a permanent fixture inside of this deck. Draco Stapelia, on the other hand, I go into this a lot, but it sometimes does not work out in my favor because most of the time, most people are expecting him. He'll put his counter out there, and then they'll put out a monster to clear him just so they can activate their effects. And then, of course, the one Mud Dragon of the Swamp. I haven't really been using him per se as for my super polys on my opponent's turn, because most decks can now sort of kind of play around super poly. I normally make him as a way to protect some of my monsters in later turns once they've established a board, to bring him out and then use his effect to kind of like try to bait some negates, like imperms and what's the name of that other card? Ghost Mourner and Moonlight Chill, and sometimes Ogre, but I use him to kind of like insulate my board a little bit. And then that's just literally the extra deck there. And then we're going to move on to this side deck here. Now, my side deck is a work in progress. I'm still trying to get used to my siding patterns and things of that nature. We got another tactics. We got another talent in the side, just to increase the consistency of seeing it if I'm going second. Then we have the one Nibiru, because most of the time we're not expecting to draw it, and if I put more in there, I don't like seeing multiples of Nibiru in my hand. He's also one of the bigger monsters that I have, so that if I need to make Titaniclad bigger than some towers, like against Ray Raptors, Nibiru is a excellent card to use in that regard. Running 3D shifters, not ideal for us, but sometimes against certain decks, playing a D shifter can end their turn, and then we can just OTK from there. Performable 5 Rainbow Magician. This card is just, I don't know how to describe it, because when you use it, it's busted. When it doesn't work, you're like, God, why did I put you in here? So he fulfills a lot of conditions just based off the fact of what he is. He's a light spellcaster, so this gives us immediate access to Sanctifier, and it puts him in the graveyard, which then allows us to get him into our Pendulum Zone just by setting a card. You set a card, he activates, you put him in your Pendulum Zone. At that point, your opponent has to set a card on the field, or else any monster that they summon, they can't use their effects because they don't control any set cards. So, at least I think that's how this works. Yeah. So this is effectively a skill drain that they have to constantly be having a card set on the field, otherwise their monster effects don't work. And that card is just, it's amazing at what it does. Then we're running the one Dogmatic of Maximus. He's just a stand-in at the moment, because we was running the deer, but the simple fact that he can technically set my graveyard up for follow-up is pretty much the only reason he's in here. Of course, I don't have a way to search him and get him into my hand, but for the time being, just having access to him, if I open him and then doing the Brandon and High Spirits play, he now has something that he can get rid of out of the graveyard and then come out, and then he can just set me up with 2 additional cards during the end phase. Then we're running the Shadal package of one dragon, one aerial, and two Shadal fusions. These are cards to help me out certain floodgates, or to deal with problematic cards like Promethean Princess and things of that nature, Flamberge and all of those guys. When they're in the graveyard, that's what she's there for. And this is sort of kind of like a going second, hope for the best type of deal, because when you go second, they normally have an extra deck monster, so you can get away with Shadal Fusion. So you got 3 branded fusions and 2 Shadal fusions. I normally drop a branded fusion so I can fit these in and not have to worry about it. Then some more back row hate in the form of Twin Twisters. And then, of course, the one El Shadal app clone, which those two help us make, which you have to side this into the extra deck. And then one performable Gatling Ghoul, which is also another time card. And so I guess that's pretty much the deck for the time being. I do have a few cards that I have thought about putting in to the deck. Oh, nope, that's not them. Where did I sit them? Ah, there we go. So just off of what I've been thinking of, probably adding back another Mirror Jade, possibly siding these 2 Phantasmes in. Gotta find another Spellbound because I'm thinking that might be decent. Also might use the Silent Magician because we terribly need some negates for spell cards. Dramaturge or Despia just for an additional monster negates, and maybe 2 crossouts, and then but that requires me to have to run. Oops. Sorry, I put that crossout a little bit too far down, but crossouts are probably not gonna run crossouts like talking about it, because crossouts require you to run cards that your opponent's gonna run. So that means I gotta take out some engine. I gotta put in. I mean, I kind of got the space to do it, but the way that the deck's set up right now, it works pretty good for me. Probably not for anybody else, but for me. I think that's probably all I can think of outside of Ultimate Slayer, but that requires me to have to fit a link in there so I can get rid of Appaloosis, because people are running Appaloosa, and it's probably gonna be the best thing that we got to get rid of her. And then probably just run this just so I can have 2 Fenrirs, and then I can have Fenrir on standby. But yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for the deck profile. This is Simon from Team Lore Chasers. Catch y'all later.